ultimately being able to actually unlock what is going on internally for you to be able to get essentially out of your own way. Um, what I see happen so incredibly frequently is that the founder is actually one of the biggest blockades, and they're actually not able to grow. They're not able to get out of their own way from a time perspective. They're doing things that ultimately are causing and inhibiting their ability to grow. And I see this, I've seen this both in myself as well as I see this in my clients. And ultimately, there's aspects of it that I'm still continuing to work on, but lots of headway that I've made there. And ultimately, I want to talk about a bit of my own experience here. The mistake that I see happen here is ultimately kind of just repeating the exact same thing, not recognizing the impact that we have to the organization, to our business. So I want us to be able to kind of name a couple of buckets of the founder's dilemma to allow for us to be able to identify and then ultimately start to change some habits. We are flawed, right? Like any other person, like our team members, like our employees, like our colleagues. We are all flawed. And as an agency owner, it's incredibly important that you recognize what those flaws are so that you can ultimately improve. We are so incredibly focused on how do we actually improve the business that a lot of us don't look inward to see how exactly can we improve upon ourselves. You, as the visionary and as the creator of this business, is ultimately the one that's going to drive things forward. And if you are not doing that inward work and up-leveling who you are as a business owner and as an agency owner, you're actually inhibiting your growth. And one of the primary things that I see that is a block for a lot of agencies to being able to grow. So I want to kind of just walk through a couple of core principles around the founder's dilemma. To grow, I must do more. So this is a huge one, and one of the first ones that I had to overcome. If you've read my book, The Agency Blueprint, I start the book talking about how I had created a business that ultimately had become a hindrance to my life. And the reason being was that my belief system at the time was that if I want to grow, I have to take on and do more. I have to be able to work harder, do more, sacrifice more to be able to have my end goal. And ultimately, in theory, I had reached that goal, right? But my life was nothing like what I actually expected it to be at that point, because in a lot of instances, if my eyes were open, I was actually working and I was reaching burnout. I was exhausted. I was tired, and I couldn't really grow anymore. I had hit a glass ceiling. There was absolutely no way I could add more time. And ultimately, it led me to no longer want the business, and I nearly actually shut it down. I spent some time reflecting and went away for a couple of days, spent some time in a hammock, wrote down really what I wanted, which actually gave me a lot of clarity as to what direction I needed to go. The thing that I learned through rebuilding my business the way that I wanted it to be was that in order for me to actually have what I wanted, I needed to do less. I needed to create boundaries. If you're familiar with the concept of Parkinson's law, where humans will utilize whatever available resources we have to them, and in that example, time, I was utilizing every single aspect of waking hours that I had to be able to grow. One of the boundaries that I've always had is I love my sleep. I always get my 8 hours. And so that was a line I didn't cross. But there was lots of other lines that I did. And so I needed to actually create boundaries, a mechanism to say yes or no. And so I had to actually have an understanding of what was okay and what wasn't, which changed the decisions that I was making, allowing for me to ultimately focus more attention to the things that I should be doing, and had me being able to prioritize the things that I should be working on and the things that I should be focusing my time and attention to. And then being able to recognize these are not a priority to me right now, or these are things I need to delegate to someone else and get off my plate, which actually gave me a framework to understand what was possible and what wasn't. The first step was creating a boundary of what was okay and what wasn't, at what hours I was going to work and what hours I wasn't. There's, some give and take in there, but ultimately understanding what those boundaries, what those hard lines are, and then where your true boundaries are and what you're able to and what you're willing to do. The other piece that then came up immediately after that was because now I'm delegating. And there was this belief system that I can do it best. And it's very ego-driven. obviously. Um, we often believe as a business owner, because we have worn so many hats, that we are actually the best to be able to do this. There's things that we absolutely despise, we do not enjoy, that is draining our energy, and yet we still think we are the best to do so. And there was an evolution of this for me, and actually recognizing ultimately that I wasn't the best at everything, that there was things that I'm really good at, and there's things that I'm not. There's things that I am okay at, and there's things that I just really hate and I just really suck at. And there's people that are better than me. And there's a big distinction that I learned recognizing this was that ultimately there's other people that actually really enjoy the things that you don't. And you're holding on to these things believing that you are the best at it. And if you really do not enjoy something and it doesn't light you up, it's almost an impossibility for you to be really great at it, because you're not putting your actual all into it. You're not really excited about doing it. So it's very difficult to actually be excited about it and actually be great at it. So I want you to look at, and there's an exercise that I've done in many instances. And if you take this page and you can just do this kind of matrix where you love and are great at, where you are okay at and you like, you're okay at and you dislike, you're bad at and you hate. And being able to break all the things and the activities within your business into those 4 different categories, allowing for you to understand kind of the things that you should be getting off, obviously starting with the bad and hate at, and the okay and dislike, and then getting the okay and you kind of like. The other item that comes up quite a lot, and it was the next thing, is being the hero. So now I've started to delegate things within the business, and things would not go to plan. And so this was a really, really difficult one for me to be able to conquer. And there's instances where it still comes, but I've, for the most part, retired my my Superman cape. There's instances in it, and it feels so good to be able to come in and save the day, having an issue that has come up in the business and ultimately being able to come into your team and show them how and fix the situation and then move on to the next, which ultimately has you kind of just bogged down by putting out fires on a consistent basis and ultimately, again, draining your energy and pulling you back into the business. And while this feels good, this does a couple of things. 1, it is a distraction for you. And 2, it inhibits your team's ability to learn. So you're actually hurting yourself and you're hurting them. So I had to learn that I needed to actually give them space to fail. Obviously not catastrophically, and understand what the boundaries of what I was going to allow and what I wasn't, and what I was comfortable and what I wasn't comfortable with, but ultimately allowing for my team to fail and learn. I learned an incredible amount from my failures, and I was preventing them from being able to do so by always coming in and saving them in the situation. What I also recognized was that I was creating an expectation that the team, that I would come in and save the day. If they failed, if they didn't accomplish it, if they didn't do whatever, that ultimately I would come in and fix it. And ultimately I had to stop doing that. And once I started to create a void, a space for me that I wasn't there, then my team actually started to fill the void. And all the things that I had been telling myself about how things wouldn't work and how the team wasn't going to be able to do it, I actually found that they were better than I had thought they were going to be by miles. And that was just because I stopped being so available to save the day every time. Very difficult one to learn, but recognize when you're putting on that Superman or Superwoman cape, and let's try to retire it. The other thing is low value activities. So there's items that we may enjoy and we're really great at, but ultimately does not have a lot of impact. So this is the next sort of stage, and the next sort of stage for me was recognizing here's items that I do really enjoy and I do really like, but ultimately is something that I can't spend my time doing anymore because there's only so much available. And so I had to start prioritizing the things that I liked and the things that I was great at and start to pass off some of those too. And recognizing what are the really impactful, growth-generating, money-generating activities within the business that allow for me to be able to get to the next stage. And so I had to start to look at how I constrained what I was doing. And so that was the next step for me, is looking at what things are lower value but I enjoy and I'm really good at, that I need to start removing from my plate as well. And things will change over time. And going through this matrix, as I had showed you, this matrix here, will change ultimately over time as well. And so you should be reevaluating. I do it every 3 to 6 months, depending on how full my time is getting. It's a way for me to kind of go through what I've been doing and where I should be focusing, getting things off my plate. It's a great exercise that I go through fairly regularly. And the final thing that we do is self-sabotage. So in the growth of your agency, there's instances where the business gets to a point where it feels bigger than you're able to manage or handle. And when that happens, there's things that we do to bring it back into a manageable place, to prevent our own failure. And there's things that we are doing of making quick changes, quick decisions that are ultimately causing us to self-sabotage. And I want you to look at the decisions that you are making, any changes to process, to systems, to clients, to service offerings. Is this a reaction or is this you responding? A reaction is an emotional decision, and a response is an analytical, data-based decision. And so are you doing this? Is this self-sabotage? Or is this actually something that you need to do? And I want you to answer the question for those decisions that you're making, changes in direction. Is it self-sabotage or not? And we've all done it. I've done it myself. And ultimately hard to recognize sometimes. But that was the next thing that I needed to recognize, because now I've grown much more than I had anticipated, to a bigger size business than I had dreamt of. And ultimately I was starting to feel self-doubt. And so I was starting to self-sabotage, and recognizing how that can potentially cause issues for you, and ultimately allow for you to understand where you're self-sabotaging and what decisions are sound and which ones aren't. So are they data-based, focused in data? Are you making decisions based in data? Are you making decisions based in emotion, reacting, or are you actually responding? I'd love to hear what sort of has worked for you, what stage you are currently in your own founder's dilemma. It has been a journey for me, and it will continue to be. As an entrepreneur and as a business owner, we're always learning, adapting, and up-leveling ourselves, and I will continue to do so, and I look forward to seeing you guys do so.